But I want to share a couple stories with you, and I want to relate that to what it means to be crucified with Christ. These two stories illustrate in a very clear way Jesus' teaching on what it means to be crucified with him. When he says, if you want to follow me, he said to his disciples earlier in his life, in his ministry, if you want to follow me, then you got to pick up your cross and follow me. You pick up your cross and you deny yourself. Follow me. And he didn't mean literally, did he? We're not going to have little toy crosses we pick up. It's figuratively, but it's denying ourselves. And when I did some research on Scripture online, it said, die to self, or selfless, or give away yourself. The things that you want to do. Did you ever, you probably did this, guys, didn't you? When you were young, moving into your teenage years, late teenage years, early 20s, did you have an idea of what you wanted to be and do? You know, when you became an adult and became independent? Did any of you think that you wanted to be somebody's servant? So I want to go to some guy's rich house, some family or whatever, and just serve them. Wash their toilets, you know, clean their clothes. Some of you may have done that, but is that something you thought about? Did you ever think about, I want to be a slave? I want to go somewhere where I may not be appreciated or loved or taken care of. I just may be forced to work and do hard labor, but that's what I want to do. Yeah,
but
I got into the military.
In the military?
I was expecting that kind of stuff.
Yeah, probably a little different. Anybody else want to say something?
Bill, I've given you every opportunity to wash my feet.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I don't understand
Yeah.
why you refuse to do that.
I'm not that humble. By the way, guy, I wanted to mention to you, just so you know, Guy was concerned about, you know, care situation for Jean. From all I know, Jean and Karen are financially fine. They have more than one home. Karen has just recently gone down, I think, or going down to sell a home they had in Arizona. A nice large home, probably worth quite a bit. They have a nice home, a lot of acreage here. Jean has a home that he owns in Sublimity, and I think Karen has a home somewhere, either here or Washington or something. So anyway, they're doing fine, so they're not going to have a problem having themselves taken care of.
Isn't Jean's condo, or isn't he part of Marion Estates in a condo?
Yeah.
It's a house, independent living house.
Okay.
So I think they're going to be fine, but we need to pray for them as, I think, kind of a Jean, and particularly, well, they're both. They're both are dealing with emotional issues because of the stress that they've gone through. So anyway, continue to pray for them. Anyway, most of us did not move into teenage years and adult life thinking that we want to be somebody's servant or a slave. If anything, I don't want to do that. I want to kind of be the one that had people serving me. I don't want to serve others. That's the way I was. I don't think all about that. But anyway, here's an interesting story that Jesus used, amongst others, to give people an idea then and now what it means to be crucified with Christ. Back in that time, it was even more significant, the difference between slaves and servants and royalty. You know, you just didn't want to be a slave. You didn't want to be a servant. And here James and John were confronting Jesus because they may have been concerned about the end times or the time when they viewed Jesus, and they didn't want to be a slave. They wanted to be up there with royalty. They perceived Jesus as royalty, which is probably right in a sense. So this is what they said. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. Kind of brazen, wasn't it? What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked. They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. When he gets to his destination, you know, in heaven, they want to be a couple of bigwigs. Sit on his left and right. Jesus said, you don't know what you're asking. He said, can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they answered. No idea. Do you realize that the disciples had no idea what was happening in the upper room, what was going to happen? Do you honestly think that they thought that he was going to be crucified and he was going to rise again, even though he said it probably, if not directly, indirectly several times? No idea. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right hand, to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. And God's already prepared that. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. And can you hear it? You know, James and John were up there asking him. The other disciples were around, the apostles. Also, just clarity, the apostles were 10. 9 minus Judas. The apostles were 10. But there were hundreds of disciples. There were hundreds of followers of Jesus Christ. Maybe thousands, who knows. But the apostles were indignant. And it says disciples, so maybe some other people were indignant. Can you believe that James and John were asking that? Where did they get off doing that? I want to be important too. I mean, that's how we do it. Jesus called them together, all the disciples, and he said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. They're the big wigs. Not so with you. This is the different parameters. Not so with you. Instead, here it is. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Royalty, what did Jesus call them here? The rulers, Sadducees, Pharisees, Roman Empire, Pilate, all those hot dogs, and then the servants, and then the slaves. That was the pecking order. So if you want to be great in this world, you're not here, which they all thought that's where they'd be, wanted to be. They were here, and maybe even here. That didn't feel good, I'm thinking. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servants. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Whoever wants to be first must be at the lowest rung. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus was the ultimate servant. Jesus emptied himself, as Philippians 2 said, made of himself nothing, not to be equal with God, took on the form of man, and he gave his life for all of us. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are called the synoptic Gospels. I think that means alike. Those 4 Gospels cover the same stories, sometimes with a different slant on them, and sometimes a little bit more than the other. John happens to be probably a little bit more personal than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Maybe because he was considered the apostle that Jesus loved. But John, there's another experience that we have with the first and the last thing, if I can find the right thing. Here. So this is found in John 13. And it's the very beginning of it. And it says, it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas. Judas was gone, doing his thing. The son of Simon Iscariot, that was who Judas was the son of Simon Iscariot to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. He knew that. He knew who he was. He knew his place. He knew what was going to happen. So he got up from the meal. Even though knowing all this, he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. You imagine how long it took to wash the feet of 11 disciples? 11 apostles?
Nope.
A long, long time. It wasn't just a simple act of humility and submission that Jesus provided by interacting with one person. He did all 11 of the disciples, of the apostles that were there. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Then, Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. And Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. and you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. So maybe Judas wasn't gone, all the impression he was. Maybe he washed his feet too. Wouldn't that be a real sign of humility? He knew he was going to betray him. When he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. You will be blessed if you act as a servant and serve others. That's what he's talking about. I'm not sure I can find it, but there's another section in the book of Matthew that talks about denying yourself. And let me see if I can grab it really quick. So, maybe I can't. So Jesus said on more than one occasion, if you want to be my followers, if you want to be my disciples, you need to deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me. Jesus, as I was talking about last week, Jesus took up his cross, I believe, as a boy. I tend to think that Jesus probably wasn't totally aware mentally of what was going on in his life as a preschooler, or even a young grade schooler. But we do know at the age of 12, he connected with the Sadducees in the temple, the teachers of the law, and he started speaking to them and teaching them about God and who he was. And they were amazed at his wisdom and his knowledge. And of course, his mother and dad were concerned because they couldn't find him. But from that point on, I believe he knew what he was doing. He knew where he was heading. And he could have chose. He was all human. He was God, but he was human. He could have chosen to reject that responsibility. He could have chosen at every point along the way, he could have chosen to not follow through on what God had called him to, but he chose to follow through. And so he knew what it was like to pick up his cross figuratively and follow God's instruction, God's leading, what he's supposed to do in his life. And then he knew physically what it meant to pick up the cross and go to go to death, to Calvary, to Golgotha. He's asking us to do the same thing. Again, not literally picking up our cross, but figuratively, but every much as significant. Figuratively, pick up what we need to in our life to empty ourselves of our own self and our desires and our whatever, and say, God, whatever it is in your life that you want me to do, I want to do that. And my own personal perspective for me is I try to do that every day. I say, God, whatever it is you want me to do today, make me willing. Give me the heart to be willing to say yes, no matter what it is. Sometimes I don't feel like it's very significant, but other times I think there are things that are presented to me that are somewhat significant that I can say yes or no to. I'm going to be a man of God who says yes. I believe that the godly person, a person who knows what it means to crucify themselves, to take up their cross and crucify themselves, they know what it means to lean into that. The idea of being crucified with Christ, giving up self. And they live their life, we live our lives on that basis, with those parameters. I am willing to give up everything in my life in order to honor God. To be obedient to him is a big deal as far as being crucified in your life, being crucified with Christ. It never ceases to amaze me when I think about it, and I think about it often. Faye and I have this niece. Her name is Renee. Renee has gone to the missionary work, the mission field. She's been in Afghanistan for what, 10 years? 7 years. Let me share with you a little bit about, well, maybe her a little bit, but let me tell you what it might take to, in your life, to take up your cross and follow him? Here's some questions. Let's see. Looks like Carrie's gone. So I'll see if I can get this up on the screen. I can read it too, but let's see. Isn't that cute?
Nope. He is.
So, so here are the questions. If you wonder if you are ready to take up your cross, consider these questions. Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means losing some of your closest friends? Think about your closest friends. Maybe you've got several of them. Rob and I consider each other close friends, and I think we'd be willing to give each other up. Yeah. But your closest friends, would you be willing to give them up? You know, and friendship can mean a lot to you. I've got, you guys are friends, my friends down here. You guys are some of my best friends. I don't have a whole lot of good friends up in Newburgh because I don't hang out with people in Newburgh too much. You guys are my good friends. I cannot imagine giving up any of you as far as being, a friend of mine. So are you willing to follow Jesus if it means losing some of your closest friends? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means alienation from your family? Your family, which would not be a thing that a healthy family would do, but a family might ignore you or reject you because of your commitment to Jesus Christ. Can you make that clear? Have any of you experienced that? That kind of a thing? So, how hard is that on you? Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means the loss of your reputation? I'm seeing some nods, that's good. Are you willing to follow Jesus if it means losing your job? That's great. So here's where Renee comes in. I don't know how you feel about going to Afghanistan. I have considered going to Afghanistan to visit Renee, but I'm scared to do that. I really am. I might be mistaken for something that people don't like and they would kill me. Renee, I think Renee's life is on the line every day, being in Afghanistan. As missionaries, they are trained how to be careful and protect themselves, and hope to circumvent those kind of problems, but she faces that. So, would I be willing to follow Jesus if it means losing my life? That's kind of a hard one. We're going to be celebrating the resurrection, not the crucifixion, but the resurrection next week. And that's going to be an exciting time. I'm looking forward to the sunrise service, even though I like to get up that early. I get up earlier than that. But my app says, weather app says it's supposed to be sunny, completely sunny that day.
Yay.
We will hope.
And next Saturday.
That's next Sunday. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to celebrating his resurrection. But I don't want to forget, nor do I want to let you forget, what he went through to experience that glorious morning. Because he was crucified, and he went through terrible torture that none of us, maybe all of us combined, would not have the strength to do. And so I just want to, and I want us to remember or realize or understand how significant that is in this world. The fact that Jesus came, he lived amongst people, he was the leader of his posse of people for 3 years, and he predicted his death, and then he predicted his resurrection when he pulled it off. That's a significant thing, and I want us to remember that. And he did that for us, and he demonstrated what it meant to be a servant. Who of us would stoop to wash other people's feet? I've been in the foot washing ceremony before, and I washed somebody's feet. It didn't bother me. I don't remember that too much. I wouldn't, you guys, but how many of us would do that? Would stoop to do that? So I want us to just wrestle with that. And being a servant of God is not a pick and choose thing. It's not something I think, I think I'll try to be a servant of God and serve others maybe today, but maybe Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday I'll take a break, and then Thursday maybe. It's a full-time thing. We're willing to be obedient to God and do what he's asking us to do, no matter how ugly it might seem, to honor it. I want us to think about that and be aware of that, particularly next week as we celebrate the resurrection. let's, take a few moments, and if you have prayer requests, Steve or something?
Yeah.